Hey guys, hey, and welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Shamika, and in today's topic of conversation is I don't actually know what I'm gonna title this video. But it's going off a video that I saw that Sargon of Akkad did. It wasn't on his channel, it was on someone else's channel, but someone else filmed Sargon having a conversation with someone probably on the other opposite end of this like political or even social scale than him, like social justice warrior sort of scale, I guess. And honestly, it was one of the first conversations I've seen in a long time with someone on one end and someone on the other end actually try to sort of understand where each other is coming from, even though I didn't think it was going to end that way from what it looks like from the beginning of the video. There's a lot of sort of heated emotions, and I do think Sargon was not listening as much as he could have and being a little bit arrogant, because I do think he's a bit arrogant, or maybe it's just his accent. And then the other girl just being sort of emotionally charged about the whole situation.
Okay, okay, tell me about those. No, tell me about those. I want to know.
Internalized oppression?
Yeah, the dynamics that you were just talking about.
That has...
Okay.
He's wanting to learn.
You don't know me. Please stop telling me what I've done. You don't know me.
But I do feel like they sort of came to some sort of understanding, and I think it helped by the one guy that was in the video that sort of helped mediate the whole thing. Because at some point the guy was kind of just like, hey, you guys are kind of saying the same thing. You're just not agreeing on exactly how to fix it, and you're not really agreeing on exactly the root cause, but you're both agreeing on these are actually issues in the black community that needs to be dealt with.
Okay,
I think you guys are really close. You're really close to common ground, because at the same time that you're talking about wanting to fight for bringing families together and having families stay intact, you're also bringing up a disproportionate amount of young black men who don't view young black women in a positive light. Like, and that's ruining more than any other group. And at the same time, you have that same group having an issue with the prison population and with fatherlessness.
I like the fact that they at least came to that sort of thing. Most conversations I've seen like this happen, especially somewhere like Berkeley, it's just someone tries to say a thing and they just start chanting how they're Hitler or something, and there's no conversation to be had. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that there was at least some sort of dialogue. Now, I was really intrigued by the conversation, and I kind of understood where the girl was coming from. This is sort of like the video that I made before, when it kind of was like, hey, white people, stop telling black people that they're completely imagining things and nothing they're saying is legit, and white people stop telling, and black people stop telling white people they're all racist. Because if you want to have a decent conversation, you have to listen to the other person's side, and you have to stop disrespecting their point of view.
And I'm grateful to have her express that concept, that you feel that young black men have a very specific reaction to young black women. Like, that's something that I would have no idea about, not being a young black woman. Like, I'm not going to pick up on that perception at all.
I know what it's like.
Exactly. So sharing that is really indicative to a basic element of that problem that we're talking about.
I'm not saying that their point of view is correct, but I'm just saying to sort of just kind of like, whatever, you're just imagining things, you're making this all up, there's no racism, you're never going to have a conversation that way. So I felt like maybe that's how the beginning of the video was going, but I feel like they sort of found some sort of middle ground. Sargon's point of the video was saying that one of the major problems in the black community is fatherless homes, which is true, even though it is very much rising in the white community. But it's been a problem in the black community for a long time now, and it all starts at home. It all starts with the individual. It has to start there. That's where the seeds is planted, and that's where they grow. Even if there's hardship on the outside of your home, you teach your children even how to deal with those things intellectually in a smart way at home. It starts at home.
I think it's a young man problem, and I think young men need their fathers. So I think the question is, how do we get families back together? And that's the real conversation that has to happen, because then you won't, it's probably too late for these guys to really...
And I think we're hitting the nail on the head.
The whole war on drugs epidemic has devastated communities, but it's also created an incentive for cops to have like civil forfeiture to now and then when you don't have someone in your family who you can take care of you when your mom is on drugs, or your mom is not in the picture, your father's not in the picture, and you have no positive role influences, and you're gonna sell drugs.
Yeah, sure.
You're gonna do it.
What else are you gonna do?
Forward to.
And I think that selling drugs, regardless of race and community,
Yeah.
I think is something indicative of the problem that you expressed of fatherlessness.
That's exactly where I was going with it.
In all
That's
aspects
exactly
of
where I was going
society,
with it.
but cops particularly target the poor drug dealers. And it gives them more.
It's always the poor. The cops are basically class conflict.
Class traitors.
No, almost.
As
Almost.
an occupation,
I don't want to say
it's
traitors, but you know what? It's not a million miles away, dude. That's a really. But
a little bit.
But I feel you on that one. I really do. You know. But the thing is, like, if it's in the young men's minds, then someone's got to show them a better way, and usually it's their fathers that show them a better way. And if they don't have their fathers around, how can that happen? It becomes a vicious cycle that they get trapped in.
The fact that there's so many fatherless homes has been a big problem, and it's sort of it's a problem, and it's spread it out and caused a lot of symptoms in the black community, and that's true. And the black girl was sort of agreeing with that, but she was disagreeing with the root cause. She was saying that because the reason why there's so much fatherless homes is because of internalized oppression.
I think it's young black men that they're in prison, right? It's mostly young black men. If you look at this,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because and as a young man, I needed my father, and he wasn't there, and I felt how I was going off the rails.
Okay.
It's something about young men in their heads, man.
But you're not looking at what I'm talking about.
Well,
The
you're
internalized
literally
oppression.
just ignoring what I'm saying.
I'm not
Yeah, but
ignoring
you're
what you
making
said.
excuse.
We're talking
I'm
about the
saying I'm
external
not.
environment.
I like the fact that she was using the word internalized oppression, because I think that puts the issue on the person, and then that makes the person have to fix the issue. Not all the white people all on the outside of the walls. That's not externalizing a problem, making it someone else's issue to fix. It's internalizing the problem. So I like the fact that she was using internalized oppression, because I agree with that. I think that some oppression is internalized. She was saying it's a lot of internalized oppression because of slavery and segregation, and just years and generations have been treated like less than humans. Men constantly being emasculated and talked to and called boy for so many years that would do something to a man's masculinity, to their ego, to their ability to be a man and step up in the household. And I agree with her that those are problems, and I said in my other video, you can't expect all these years of oppression of the black community not have any effects on the black community today. I think that would be kind of naive to say.
From slavery, we went to sharecropping, we went to black codes, we went to Jim Crow, we went to segregation. We haven't had the opportunity to heal ourselves.
But I disagree with her when I say I think that is the root cause of the problem, or even the only cause, because like Sargon pointed out, back in the 30s up to the 50s, the black community, the black families were actually they stayed together just as much as white people, or even more. The black nucleus family was strong, very, very strong. The black communities were strong. That's why like a lot of people talk about the real estate market back then, that it was racist and that intentionally segregated people by not letting black people move into white neighborhoods and vice versa. And it's seen today as like, oh, they pushed all these black people into the ghettos. Back then, they weren't necessarily the ghettos. I'm not saying what they did was correct. I think it was wrong, and I'm not saying it didn't have any negative consequences today. But back then, they weren't the ghettos. They were just black communities, like Black Bottom and Hastings Street back in Detroit. They were black owned neighborhoods, black businesses, black owned property, and black communities helping one another. It wasn't actually the ghettos back then. It was just black neighborhoods. But back then, there were strong communities back then, and also the crime rate, the black on black crime rate, was non-existent in those times. And so if the problem or the reason why there's so many fatherless homes is just based on slavery and use of segregation, then why was the black family, the nucleus family, ever strong? If that was the case, then fatherless homes would have been an issue this whole entire time. It would have never been an issue. It would have never been a case where there was a time where fathers stayed home with their kids, that it was really looked down upon to leave your children. I mean, it is still today, but I mean, it was like freaking social suicide. Like, you just don't do that. So if that was the root, if that was the issue, if that was the cause of why black men don't stay with their families, then why was there ever a strong black family? There were always been broken families this whole time. The number would have always been high. If the root cause is what she said it is, slavery and stuff like that, then why is the black on black crime high now? Why wasn't it always high? It wasn't always like this. So something happened in between. And what Sargon was saying is because one of the reasons is because welfare. And I've said this in one of my videos. I don't know if I posted it yet. And other, smart black people have come out and said the welfare system is one of the things that really destroyed the black community, because they basically replaced the father, and women then married the state instead. Because one of the things that men provide is, they protect and provide, basically. And if the government says, hey, we will protect you and we will provide for you, you don't need that man, then it encourages women to leave the husbands, because if the man is in a household, you will no longer be qualified, or you'll be harder to qualify for welfare. And also incentivizing women to have more kids, because the more kids you have, the more welfare you get. So it actually kind of hurt the black community.
I will give you that at one point, I get worried whenever the government seems to incentivize family decisions, whether that's being a single parent or getting an abortion, or pick your subject. Anytime the government gets involved incentivizing you to make a decision within your family, I would assume that they're trying to control you and not trying to free you. That's why they're getting involved.
I agree. I never would support that they weren't trying to control and support.
I'm not saying I'm not for social welfare, some sort of social support, whatever country or state or city you're living in, but I do think it's been a problem, and it sort of needs to be kind of reined back a little bit. It's been adjusted somehow throughout the histories, but still probably not enough. But he was saying that was one of the reasons. So, and I agree with that, because like, again, if the only reason was internalized oppression, then black family, the single mother homes in the black community would have always been a problem, and that's not true. There's history of families being very, very strong. I even saw like a really old commercial that is a trip, and you should freaking Google it. Actually, it's called How to Sell to a Negro. It's like from way back in the day, the 50s, I guess, and it was a legit sales training video to train salesmen how to sell to black people, but it was called How to Sell to a Negro. Even in the video, it said the black family is stronger now than ever, that the black family stay together. They're usually like working or middle class. They work, kids are in school, they have houses, they have property. Like, it wasn't always what we see it is today. Not that I'm saying that's everybody. There's a lot of successful black people now and today. But I'm just saying, like, if that was the root cause, like the girl was saying, then we would have never saw that. The history would have always been fathers aren't home, black on black crime. That would have always been history, but it's not the history. So it has to have been something, even if, their internalized misogyny has always been there, it always had to be something to interject, to agitate the problem that might have already been there. You know what I mean? And so I agree with what she was saying full-heartedly. I totally agree with what she was saying, because I do think you cannot say that all these years, like, of the past has no effect on the present, even though I don't think that's an excuse. I don't think that's a reason to not do better at all, but you can't say it doesn't have some trickling effect into the black community. So I agree with what she was saying, but I also agree with Sargon of Akkad was saying. I do think he was correct in what he was saying, and I think she was correct in what she was saying. The only thing I think she was wrong on is the whole, like, internalized oppression is the only thing that's really hurting the black community, and that's the main cause of effect, that's the main root cause. Like, I don't agree with that. I think that's there, and that might be an issue, and that might be a symptom, but I don't think that's the root cause. I don't think that was the thing that completely blew up the black nucleus family. I don't think that's what it was. I think it was welfare, and I also think it was, mass incarceration, which is something that they actually also discussed. And they both, like, her and Sargon both agreed that fatherless homes, mass incarceration, crime in the black community exist, but they just disagreed on the root cause and how to fix it. And so I liked that part. And then the second part of the video. The second part of the video was Sargon sort of shifted. There were some other small conversations in between. Sargon then shifted his attention to these other two women, and they were talking about why black men don't marry black women.
Why are black men gone from our community? What are your questions?
Okay, I mean, like, so she got to a point where she was saying how young black men have this stereotype about young black women in their heads, and they don't like the stereotype, so they don't marry young black women. Do you guys agree?
Well, I don't know. Okay.
Not all young black men.
No. I know. We're talking generally, but obviously, it's not everyone. There's a significant number, right? And so, why do they have that stereotype? So is it? And I know this is going to be a rough question, but what's the stereotype? What do you think the stereotype they have? If we take into account
that black men, black women.
There's a very
Now, Sargon, look, what he said can seem very frivolous, and it can probably put anybody on the defensive of a white man telling black girls that black men don't want to marry black women because black women have attitudes. I can see how that's very defensive and can seem very superficial. Like, are you saying that's the only reason why black men don't marry black women? But he wasn't saying that was the only reason, but he just kept sort of on that topic, and even the girls were kind of being like, okay, what's the point of this? Like, why are you, like, okay, we talked about this, what is the point of it? And I don't feel like he ever truly got to the point, but it kind of sounded like he was putting all the responsibility on black women, which I don't necessarily agree. I think he did sort of say throughout the video, like, no, I'm not saying that, but it sounded like that's what he was saying. That, they're all black women. And so, but, like, as he was talking to the girls, and the girls, he was saying, like, okay, the stereotype about black women are they're too masculine, they're too aggressive, they're too loud, they're too controlling. And you have to kind of look at the history of the family. Once again, fatherless homes. A lot of black women had to go to that point. They had to become aggressive. They had to become loud. They had to become more masculine. They had to become more controlling because they were the only parent in the homes raising their kids. So they couldn't be meek and soft and submissive because there was no man to take over that role. And so they sort of had to play both roles. And then it kind of just trickled out of the household and became like who they were even in their dating life. And plus, a lot of women are jaded and they don't trust men, and a lot of black women grew up in fatherless homes, and so they don't have a very good image of men, and so they just think men are just dogs and they don't care and they will just use you and throw you away. And so it's just their perspective and their experience. And again, I'm not saying there's tons of black love out there, tons of amazing black families, tons of amazing black successful people. I'm just saying that this was the conversation, that this was the topic of the conversation. And so I understand why black women had to become sort of more of a warrior, because they needed to protect their kids. They needed to be able to control their household, and you have to be a bit more stronger and a bit more aggressive and maybe a bit more of a bitch to make sure that your kids are okay and to make sure you don't get taken advantage of. And so I think that's, I think, black women may maybe just be naturally strong, but like I feel like that's sort of why black women sort of evolved into that, is because it also has to do with fatherless homes. So anyway, they didn't hit on that, but so Sargon was trying to like say this is the stereotype. And he asked the black girls, do you agree with that stereotype? And with a lot of hesitation, the black girls eventually agreed. Said, yeah, that's a stereotype, but that's a stereotype. And in a lot of communities, Hispanic women are, stereotyped to be, attitudes, but they're also stereotyped to be very sensual and loving and family oriented. But anyway, every race can have an attitude. Every woman in the world can have an attitude and be bitch and aggressive and masculine and controlling. Like, that's just not in the black community. But he was saying, yeah, I know this, but this is the stereotype on the black community. This is not the stereotype for Asian women. This is not the stereotype for white women. And I'm not saying it's right once again, but the stereotype is out there. And he was just trying to like, let's just say what it is. Let's just make it black and white and be simple language here, and just sort of let's all raise our hand and say we've heard of that stereotype. And so the black girls eventually with hesitation was like, yeah, we've heard of that stereotype. So he was basically saying like, he started to be like, well, stereotypes usually are sort of steeped in some type of truth. So do you think there's truth to that whatsoever? And again, with a lot of hesitation, a lot of sort of interruption for this white guy on the side, they eventually said, of course there's some truth to it. But again, that's all racist. That every woman of every race can be labeled that. And again, he said, yes, that's true. But unfortunately, that is not their stereotype. That is a stereotype for black women. I'm not saying this is right, by the way. I'm not saying this stereotype is correct. And I think there's a reason why. Again, I just mentioned because women had to take control. They had to be the heads of the household for so long that I feel like this is the reason why. But I'm not saying the stereotype is correct. But I can say that, yeah, I can say that some black women are like that, and just like there's women of all races that's like that. But anyway, so with a lot of hesitation, they finally said, yeah, of course, but women of all races are like that. And he was like, well, like if I'm a black man and I know that's the stereotype, why would I want to marry a black woman? And so basically, I feel like in a way he was trying to put all the responsibility on women. And even though I think he denied that, that's what it sounded like. And if I was a black woman having that conversation with him, I would be naturally defensive. Even though, like, I would, like, even now, like, I would be like, okay, what's your point? It kind of sounded like he was putting all the responsibility on them, even though I don't think he would say that he was doing that. That's what it sounded like. And so basically saying, like, well, if black women just stop acting like that, then maybe more black women will marry if black women stop acting like that, then maybe more black women marry black women. But at the same time, if more black men will marry black women and stop leaving them abandoned with their children, more black women wouldn't have to feel the need to put their guard ups all the time. They wouldn't have to feel the need to be angry. They wouldn't have to feel the need to be aggressive. They wouldn't have to feel the need to be controlling. They wouldn't have to feel the need to be non-trusting to men if men would stop fucking abandoning their children and leaving the women there with all the responsibility to themselves. So to me, it's a two-way street, and it's sort of a cycle. Like, one affects the other and the other affects the other. So you can't just say, like, oh, it's just on black women. But in saying that, I do believe that you have to sort of look at yourself and also take responsibility. It's hard to see yourself. It's hard to see your part to play in anything when you are the victim of the situation. When a man leaves his kids, he's the villain, and the wife and the children, or the woman and the children, are the victims of the story. And so I feel like it's hard for any woman in any community to say, like, well, no, it's men's fault because they're assholes and they left. But men are men. Like, if you read, like, I read a few books about the psychology of men. Men are very simple-minded. Not to say that they're stupid, but there's certain things that they need, and just give them those few things, and they seem to kind of be okay. And one of the things is men have a innate desire to want to lead and provide and do those things. They have that hunt and gathering mentality, and if they're not giving that, it's something that they're missing from them. Like, they're missing out on something, and they need to feel that way. Like, I've had boyfriends tell me, because I usually date men who are very, very into gender roles, and I like gender roles. I like men being the men and I will be the woman. And they'll say, like, it's nothing better to watch the person you love smile and know that you put that smile on their face, than know that you provided for them. Know that you're doing your job as a man, and you're making sure that they feel comfortable enough that they can be vulnerable with you. So I think men like that feeling, but I feel like, in the black community, women for so long has been sort of just dragged through the mud that they're not willing to be vulnerable anymore, because they've seen their mothers and their aunties and their sisters get hurt over and over again. So they're not willing to be vulnerable, and so then it's this brokenness in the sort of the relationship. The man wants to sort of take control. The woman won't let him be vulnerable, so the man feels like, well, they're not able to fully be men or something like that. But also, if the man has unhealthy masculinity, then the woman shouldn't be vulnerable. So it's like this whole cycle. It's like this whole, like, it's broken. And that was one thing that the first black girl was saying, and I forgot to mention that. That's one thing that I really like that she said, is that the black community is broken, and there needs to be a lot of healing. You're
not looking at how we have internalized oppression that came from us being not human beings, and us treated as property for hundreds of years, and then suddenly not.
That leaves scars.
Sure. It's got to leave scars.
Fucking scars.
It has to. How could it not leave scars, right?
Exactly.
And that's something I agree with. And I also like the fact that she, again, put the responsibility on the black community and nobody else. And I loved that, because so many black leaders, oh, it's the white people, white people. No, like, she put the responsibility on the black community. She did say there was, like, institutionalized racism and society is racist and stuff like that, but she was putting the responsibility of the healing on the black community. And I really, really like that she did that. And I do agree, because there's, Larry something, this one guy, I forgot his name, I'll put his name on the screen and maybe flash a video of him. He was on Dave Rubin, and he kind of advocates this. This is kind of his cross that he's bearing. This is kind of his platform that he stands on. Is the biggest problem in the Black community is fatherless homes and women having too many babies out of wedlock and not marrying the fathers and having too many kids with different fathers and stuff like that. And I agree with him. And so his big thing is that people need to get married. Black people need to start getting married again, and they need to stay together, and when they have kids, they need to stay together. And I agree with everything he's saying, but I feel like we're skipping a step. Like, just getting married, I don't think is gonna totally fix the Black community. It would help. I think the biggest problem is people not staying home with their kids. So I think the biggest thing we should be talking about is people need to stop having kids, especially out of wedlock, and especially when they can't afford it and they don't have the tools emotionally, mentally, or financially to take care of their kids, which is why I had a big problem with Andy Worski and Lauren Sutherland's videos about, oh, we need y'all just pop out babies because we need to extend our bloodline. Like, do you know how many kids are being abused, suffering, don't have food, in foster care because a bunch of people don't know the meaning of family planning? So anyway, I think that's something we need to bring back into the Black community, is family planning. So I feel like with the whole like run and get married and run and have kids, I feel like we're skipping a step. I do feel like there needs to be a lot of healing involved, not just in the Black community, but within individuals. I think, you know, mental health is a problem. People need to seek out therapy. People need to make sure they're okay. People need to make sure they're healthy, because a lot of times you don't realize that you still have some hurt there until you get into relationships and until you have children. And one of the reasons why Oprah Winfrey decided not to have kids, because she was abused. And a lot of times you think that you heal, like you're not affected by your abuse until you have children and you start to abuse your children. And so I feel like a lot of healing, a lot of therapy, a lot of help, a lot of, you know, soul searching needs to go on in the Black community, and a lot of healing with one another needs to go on within the Black community before we just start getting married, because divorce is still high, and there's a reason why that is high, and not just in the Black community, everywhere. Before you get married, like, don't just jump to get married. Like, figure out, like, if you come from a family of brokenness, why is that brokenness there? Figure out, make sure that brokenness is not going to get passed down to you and then passed down to your children. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like we're skipping a step by just like trying to get everybody married and have babies. Anyway, so I agree with her when she was saying that a lot of healing needs to be done in the Black family, because, and so yeah, I agree with that, and I was happy to see that she put it on the Black community, not elsewhere. So back to the conversation that Sargon was having with the two girls, that kind of was sort of the gist of it. Like, he kept sort of like nudging the idea, like, well, you know, Black men don't want to marry Black women because of this reason, so maybe you guys should stop having so many fucking attitudes. But there's a reason why Black women have attitudes. There's a reason. So it's a give and take. It's a cycle. Anyway, I'm rambling in this video, but I really actually thought that video was quite interesting, and I'll put the links to everything that I mentioned in the description box below, if I remember. But yeah, like, so I think everybody had a good point except the random, I don't know, white guys that were trying to like be Captain Save the Day, like Captain Save a Ho, the white knights of the day, and virtual signaling. Like, their input was very much not needed, and it did nothing to the conversations. I wish they would have just butt out of it. The white allies, like, I'm gonna come speak for Black people, look at me. So I thought it was a good conversation, even though I don't know if she walked away feeling any different. I don't know if either of them, I don't know if Sargon walked away feeling like he learned anything. I don't know if the Black girls or anybody in that conversation walked away feeling like they learned anything. But I still like the conversation, because at least they were trying to have a conversation. You know, I think those girls could have easily just said, fuck you, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, walked away, and everybody in Berkeley campus would have applauded them for it. But they didn't do that. It was even like this one Muslim girl that kept coming in like, you're okay? You're okay? Do you need a safe space? And the Black girl was like, no, I'm good. Even though she did say at some point, like, this conversation is traumatizing me. I'm like, oh, God. She's going to need that safe space. You better start doing this and not clapping, because it's going to trigger her. Anyway, I digress. As a whole, I liked the conversation. I think it was good, and I wish more people have conversations like this. Again, if you want to have conversations with either side, you guys have to listen to each other and not talk over each other, and try to keep the emotions to a limit. And I know that can be hard sometimes, especially when you're talking about your race of people. And I do quite frankly think Sargon can be a little arrogant sometimes, and like I said, it could just be his accent that's perpetuating that idea to me. But I think he's one of those people that's very well read, that reads a lot of books, and he's even said himself that he loves to read. That's his favorite thing to do in his spare time. And I've met people like that feel like, well, I read a lot of books, so I'm actually more smarter than a person who actually experienced it. You know what I mean? It's really condescending to like tell someone who's experienced it that you're wrong about your experiences. So he can come off a little bit arrogant, but I did agree with everything he was saying. I do think the whole like black woman got an attitude thing came off a little bit like, where are you going with this? But I got where he was going with it. Anyway, I like the video. You should go watch it. That's the end of this video. I just really want to talk about that because I thought it was interesting. If you have any comments on Sargon himself or the video that I mentioned or anything I said, disagree with me or agree with me, let's have a discussion. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a debate. You can leave it in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like it and share it. Get it out there so YouTube doesn't suffocate my channel. And if you want to continue to have conversations like this, discussions like this, please subscribe. And if you subscribe, hit the bell so you get the notifications when I do upload. And thank you.